Hey, this is Blake from the Gig Harbor Fly Shop, and welcome to the Gig Harbor Fly Show. And we have Ben from OPST with us today. He's been tying a bunch of flies, and we'll post another video of one of his demos in a little bit. Look for the link for that. But we wanted to ask Ben a couple questions for those of you that are starting out tying steelhead flies. Hi.
Howdy.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure.
So for those of people viewing, starting out tying intruders, it can be a little bit complicated with time-space management and materials and all that kind of stuff. What are like 3 of the most common mistakes you see with people starting out with intruders tying flies?
Well, I would say number 1 is slow down and really focus on the technique rather than the end result that you want. We all want to tie a badass intruder, catches a lot of fish that everyone thinks looks cool. But it's kind of like in casting when if you try to reach the far bank, if you try to cast 100 feet and that's your goal, you're going to ignore the technique and you're going to run into some hurdles. Really take the time, if you're tying a composite loop style, to manage the materials, to when they're in the dubbing loop, applying tension with your left hand, to take your pick, your tool or whatever, and separate the fibers. Using water, that would be, I guess that's sort of number 2. Have a glass of water, have a cup of water on the desk, and get that loop soaking wet so you can part it, you can compress it, and you can get as many materials as possible in as little a space as possible. So I guess those would be the major.
Okay,
things.
so materials. Let's talk about materials for a second. And there's a bunch of materials that you've been using today. What are maybe a couple materials that people just starting out with intruders should look to use because of their ease? They're easy to use. And then what are a couple materials that just starting out, you're like, hey, don't wait until you've been at this a little bit because it's just going to create some frustration.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the most important things that materials that we use is ice dub, and that forms the bread or the Velcro in the sandwich that we're trying to create in the composite loop. And the reason is because it's really nice and crinkly and it grips onto the other materials really well, holds them all together. So that's key. There are some straight fiber dubbings that don't work nearly as well. Some dubbings are too short, some are too long. Ice dub is nice because you can break it. If you're tying a smaller fly, you can break those fibers. Synthetics in general are going to be easier to tie with because they're, for the most part, they don't have a taper. Your Grizzly Flashabou, Baitfish Emulator Flash, Predator Wrap, all these things have no taper, and so you can cut and then lay them 50-50 over the thread. It gets a little bit trickier when you tie with like lady hammers or pheasant or turkey or anything, any of the natural fibers that have a taper, because then you have to really make sure that the butts are in the right place over that line of thread.
Because of the length. You can't just like cut it to length.
You only have so much feather and you need to put it in a specific place. So once you're comfortable, loading materials in a composite loop, I would say start with synthetics and then move on to some of your nice, beautiful Amherst or turkey, or ostrich even. Ostrich is a little bit easier because the fibers separate. If you see these feathers here on the Amherst, they're stuck together, and if you're not really diligent about separating them with the brush, they'll stick together in a dubbing loop too, and they won't look very good. So it takes a little more effort and attention. Okay, so
today I saw you using a couple different tools. Do you want to just go over what are some of the essential tools for tying intruders, especially with the composite loop style that you've been demonstrating?
Yeah, I tie pretty much all my intruders on shanks, on OPST hook shanks. They come in 2 varieties. This is a steelhead. You can put a bead or a cone on these, and then we have the intruder shanks, which somewhere around here, and they're better for tying with dumbbell eyes. They have a returned eye, and that makes a nice little platform for the eyes. to actually tie on those shanks, the best thing I found is our OPST shank tool. Shank, it holds onto the shank, fits just about any vise in the universe. If my hands weren't shaking, I could get it in there. Secure it on, and that thing is not going anywhere ever, and neither is the tool.
Does that also work with tube fly needles and such as well?
It depends on the size of the needle.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's primarily designed for shanks. You can also unscrew this housing here, and it becomes a tube fly. You can fit metal tubes down to about 2 millimeters. So that's a pretty
sweet,
nice feature as well. But that's a big tool.
Okay.
Probably the most important one, though. I mean, you can put a shank in a vise. It's not very fun, but you can. Probably the most important is the OPST dubbing spinner. And the real key here is that it's just quite heavy. And you know, you'll see in the video that Blake posted, you can just spin it once and
it doesn't stop.
It
It just keeps going.
Yeah, it just keeps going. And you know, it doesn't matter if you're tying a dainty little loop or if you're tying like a leech with semi-seal or something, it doesn't matter. But if you're tying something with 3-4 materials and some stiff feathers and whatnot, that's the tool you want. Everything I like to have, just not specifically to relating to composite loops, but is just scissors. I have a crappy pair of scissors and I have a good pair of scissors. And you know, if I'm cutting the mono for my loops, I use the crappy one. Or if I'm cutting, you know, wire or what have you, and save your good scissors for tying finer stuff.
Well, and then here's one that I saw you using earlier. The special dubbing brush to brush out the loops, and apparently Colgate is the brush of choice. Okay.
One of our sponsors.
Yeah. And have you ever had to use this to brush your teeth because you forgot your real toothbrush on a trip?
But if I did, I maybe could pick it out.
That ice dub would probably, yeah.
And another point to make is, you know, I haven't done this in a little while, so there's a mix of dubbing in here, but when you're tying these, you can salvage this dubbing, and you know, over time, you'll save some money, quite a bit of money actually, by salvaging the dubbing. So it's just as good. It comes out of the loop. And
so Ben, there's a bunch of materials, synthetics that are on the market. A lot of it's new stuff that you guys are tying these intruders with. Kind of, you know, for people that are wanting to get into tying intruders and maybe haven't heard about some of these new materials, go over for us, you know, 5 or 6 of these materials that you're really excited about.
Yeah, sure thing. I guess number one, when I saw this, I fell in love. Grizzly Flashabou. It comes in this sort of finer size. I don't know what the size is called, and it comes in a Magnum, both of which are incredible. I mean, Grizzly, there's just something about the alternating black and color. It's amazing. It's got good motion if you make it a stronger. I mean, if you use it on a longer fiber, as in this fly here, but it's also got some stiffness for some backbone in the shoulder.
Here, let's show off this fly a little bit. So here's one of the flies that he tied up.
Still drying, so maybe it'll look a little better.
That looks good. Looks great.
Another one that we've been using a lot is Senyo Predator Wrap. This is clear barred, comes in UV, comes in a bunch of different colors, and again, kind of same thing. It's a little bit more limp than the Flashabou. You can use this. It's really shrimpy. The clear goes with just about any color combination, so you can use that as a base if you just want to get one color. Looks good in trout flies. Looks good in a lot of different applications.
I saw you using this stuff too.
Polar
chenille.
Polar chenille is incredible. Like for pink salmon season, a marabou tail, polar chenille body, and a bead head.
Yeah.
Just like lights out all day long. Same thing. I mean, you can use it a variety of ways. Sometimes I like to rib my intruders with it, or
yeah, I saw.
Yeah, like this one has a polar chenille.
This one too.
Rib, and that, I mean, just the lightest just the smallest breath of air or water on that will move it. So I really like that. Really like that fly too. One that's brand spanking new, had a hairline, is electric ripple ice wing fiber. And I saw this, and the first thing I said was Intruder shoulder. It's really stiff. This is kind of a loud color, but I mean it's really coarse and stiff, and that in a dubbing loop will
it's almost like a synthetic bucktail.
Yeah,
that's what I first thought of it. Yeah,
that's pretty much exactly what it is. You know, no taper, so you can tie it 50-50, and a bunch of different colors like everything else. Angel hair, always a favorite. You guys do a lot of saltwater stuff, and this is extremely useful. This is a nice way to finish off your intruders too, or finish off whatever kind of fly. It's really small fiber, so it makes kind of a neat head, and if you leave a little too much space and you need to kind of salvage it, you need to sort of touch fly up, that's a good option.
Let's talk. Okay, so you talked about ice dub as being the Velcro in the composite loop. So, but not all ice dub is the same, depending on the different colors. Like sometimes the texture is differently. So maybe talk about a couple of the colors that you really like that work well, and then some of the colors that, because of the texture, they don't work as well for the loops.
Yeah, the two that I've really found don't work as well are silver and steely blue.
Yeah.
And for some reason, those are just like straight, fibers are straight, and they'll just kind of, you can put them in a loop, but they shouldn't really form, you know, the Velcro. The other colors, for the most part, are crinkly. This one here is magic. This is another color, another material that you can use just about across the board with, you know, you can use this with orange, pink, black, and blue. Some of my flies, I use this as a little core, little bead stop, and just a little accent. It's an amazing, something about that lavender is really pretty special. And then there's the old standards too, you know, crystal flash seems so just like a thing of the past, but the UV
What is that?
Crystal flash coming in 1982.
Yeah.
This stuff actually is really nice and stiff in a loop too. Just make it, you know, nice and short. Again, the lavender, I sort of am into lavender these days. I talk about baitfish emulator flash. Baitfish emulator flash. I find myself using a lot of this in loops. Oh, here's another one. Creepy crawly ice dub. Now, of all the materials that I've put in the water, I think this one stands out the most. Seriously, this is ridiculous. And this is dark olive UV, but it looks great in a black and blue fly. So that one is one to really look at. Chicone's barred rubber legs, another one of those materials that it was an automatic purchase for me. Just a little subtle barring, really shrimpy. Gotta have it.
Great. Thanks for joining us for the Gig Harbor Fly Show. All of these materials are on our website for purchase, shop.gigharborflyshop.com. We'll see you soon.